Most people were taught that World War II began with the rise of a ruthless dictator in Germany. They were taught that extreme ideology and military aggression pushed Europe into total destruction. But if you look closely at history, a crucial financial question is almost always left out. How did a country that was completely bankrupt, collapsing under hyperinflation in 1923, the most powerful military machine in Europe, from just 15 years later? The official story usually points to the Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919. In that grand hall in France, the victorious Allied nations imposed a staggering penalty on Germany. 132 billion gold marks in war reparations. To the average citizen, presented as a moral punishment for the devastation of World War I. In school textbooks, it is described as the direct trigger of the economic collapse of the Weimar Republic. We see the iconic archival photographs of 1923, showing children playing with stacks of worthless banknotes, and families pushing wheelbarrows filled with millions of marks, just to buy a single loaf of bread. But on the ledger books of international finance, number 132 billion was never meant to be collected in cash. In reality, that astronomical debt was designed as financial leverage. It was a mechanism to force the German economy into a permanent credit trap. A mechanism that bound Berlin directly to the private banking houses of Wall Street and the diplomatic chambers of London and Paris. This created what financial historians call triangle debt cycle. A massive speculative pipeline of international credit that temporarily stabilized Europe in the 1920s, while secretly laying the groundwork the most destructive conflict in human history. Understand how a bankrupt nation was rebuilt for a second global war, not look only at political speeches. We must follow the paper trail, straight into the boardrooms of New York and the secret ledgers of international high finance. By early 1923, the fragile Weimar government in Berlin was utterly exhausted. The German treasury was empty, its gold reserves were drained, and its industrial output was crippled. When Germany defaulted on its scheduled delivery of timber and coal, France and Belgium acted without hesitation. In January 1923, Russian-Belgian troops marched directly into the Ruhr Valley, the industrial heartland of Germany, responsible for 80% of its steel and coal production. French commanders seized the factories, took control of the railways, and attempted to collect reparations directly in physical raw materials. In response, the German government ordered passive resistance. Drivers in the Ruhr went on strike, refusing to operate the mines or run the steel mills for foreign occupiers. Those striking workers, come in and keep the basic functions of the state alive. Reichsbank did the only thing it could do. It ran its printing presses 4 hours a day. The result was hyperinflation on a scale the modern world had never seen before. In late 1923, $1 US was worth 4.2 trillion German marks. Life savings accumulated over generations were wiped out in a matter of weeks. The middle class of Germany was completely destroyed, either from leaving behind a desperate, impoverished population and a shattered economy. France had occupied the factories, but it quickly realized a cold truth. Cannot mine coal with bayonets. Cannot collect billions in war debt, a society that has ceased to function. Our European financial system was grinding to a dangerous halt. Britain was falling into deep debt to the United States. France could not repay its American war loans unless it received gold from Germany. And Germany was on the verge of total economic collapse, communist revolution. Allied governments were stuck in a deadlock. They needed a third party to step into the room. An entity with massive capital, bold financial calculations, no official military troops on the ground. That entity was Wall Street. In 1924, an American banker and politician named Charles Dawes was appointed to head an international committee of financial experts. His mission was simple: urgent, restore stability to the German economy, so that war reparations could start flowing again. The solution he engineered became known as the Dawes Plan. On the surface, it was presented to the public as a humanitarian and diplomatic triumph that saved Europe from financial ruin. Underneath the diplomacy, it was a masterclass in private debt restructuring. Dawes' plan reduced Germany's immediate annual reparation payments to a manageable level. It reorganized the German central bank, Reichsbank, under strict foreign supervision. And most importantly, it opened a massive pipeline of international credit. Ushered primary through private investment banks in New York, by J.P. Morgan and Company, and Dillon Red and Company. The mechanics of this financial triangle were brilliant, but yet terrifyingly fragile. Wall Street banks issued massive foreign loans to German cities, municipal governments, and private corporations. The Weimar Republic used that inflow of American dollars to stabilize its new currency, Mark, and rebuild its domestic industries. Germany then took those same funds and paid war reparations to France and Britain. France and Britain took those funds, transferred them back across the Atlantic to repay their own World War I debts to the United States Treasury, from and Wall Street investors. Dollar for dollar, American money was traveling in a giant circle. From it flowed from New York investment houses into the German economy. Holland to London and Paris, and back to New York. On the New York Stock Exchange, German imperial bonds were marketed to ordinary American investors as high-yield, safe investments. Wall Street made tens of millions of dollars in underwriting fees and transaction commissions. The international banking system was booming. 5 brief years, between 1924 and 1929, from the world appeared prosperous. The Weimar Republic experienced what historians call the Golden Twenties. Subways were built, modern architecture flourished in Berlin, factories operated at peak capacity. This prosperity was built entirely on short-term foreign debt. Germany had not paid off its original obligations. It had simply covered its old debts by taking on massive new ones. And the primary mortgage holder of the nation was now Wall Street. Where did those billions of dollars in American capital actually go once they crossed the Atlantic? A significant portion of those foreign loans did not remain in the government treasury. Instead, American capital poured directly into the balance sheets of Germany's massive industrial conglomerates. During the mid-1920s, American financial institutions underwrote the expansion of heavy industry in the Ruhr Valley. 3 corporate giants emerged from this period as the unquestioned rulers of German manufacturing. IG Farben, the massive chemical trust, the historic steel and armaments producer, and Vereinigte Stahlwerke, others from the United Steelworks of Germany. American private investment helped these corporate entities modernize their equipment, streamline their production lines, and dominate European markets. Standard Oil of New Jersey formed intimate research partnerships and cross-licensing deals with IG Farben to develop synthetic rubber and synthetic gasoline. General Electric purchased major stakes in the German electrical giant AEG. Red and Company floated tens of millions of dollars in bonds, specifically for the United Steelworks. To American financiers, this was not a political gamble. It was pure business. Over the loans made under the Dawes Plan, Germany's industrial capacity had to be maximized. A strong industrial Germany was necessary to generate the export revenues required to service international debt. However, these giant manufacturing combines were the exact same industries that had powered the Kaiser's war machine in 1914. Behind closed factory doors, and under the cover of commercial research, these corporate giants kept Germany's military technology alive. Where the small defense force permitted under the Versailles Treaty worked closely with industrial executives. They designed dual-use machinery, experimented with advanced metallurgy, and perfected chemical synthesis. The international banking community was fully aware that German industrial power was growing far beyond normal civilian needs. Yet as long as bond interest was paid on time, credit lines remained active. Awesome. No one in New York, London, or Paris had any interest in stopping the machinery. The world was financing the infrastructure of a war it did not yet know was coming. October 29, 1929, fragile financial superstructure of the world economy fractured. The Wall Street stock market crash shattered the illusion of endless credit. Almost overnight, American investment banks stopped issuing foreign loans. New York financial institutions began frantically calling back their short-term credit lines from European institutions. The effect on the German economy was instantaneous, catastrophic. Weimar Republic's economic engine was fueled entirely by foreign credit. When that credit pipeline was suddenly shut off, our nation went into cardiac arrest. In 1930, the Dawes Plan was dead. In a desperate effort to prevent total default, international financiers met once again, the Young Plan. Named after American industrialist O&D. Called Young, this new plan attempted to reduce Germany's total reparation debt roughly $28 billion. It stretched the payment schedule out over 59 years, meaning German citizens would be paying off World War I reparations until the year 1988. To manage these international transfers, the negotiators created a brand new institution in Switzerland, the Bank for International Settlements, or the BIS. One central bank for central bankers, trying to coordinate international debt transfers away from public scrutiny. But the Young Plan came far too late. The global depression deepened, trade barriers rose, and unemployment in Germany skyrocketed. In 1931, major European banks were collapsing. Armstädter, one national bank, one of Germany's largest banking institutions, at its doors, triggering a complete run on the banking system. Over 6 million German citizens were suddenly unemployed. Families stood in endless lines for soup kitchens, while young men wandered the streets with no money, no food, and no future. The political system of the Weimar Republic collapsed under the strain. The moderate democratic politicians who had signed the Versailles Treaty and managed the Dawes Plan were seen by the public as traitors. Men who had sold Germany into financial slavery to foreign bankers. In this atmosphere of absolute desperation, political fringes found their opportunity. A small radical political party led by a charismatic demagogue began gaining massive ground. Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party did not win over the public by promising complex economic theories. They offered a simple, powerful narrative of grievance. They blamed the Versailles Treaty, foreign bankers, and international debt schedules for every single hardship in German life. Promised to tear up the treaty, cancel all war reparations, and restore national pride. In the 1928 elections, the Nazi Party had won a mere 2.6% of the vote. By September 1930, as Wall Street loans vanished, a share of the vote surged to over 18%. By July 1932, they were the largest political party in the Reichstag. The sudden withdrawal of Wall Street capital had broken the Weimar Republic, created the precise economic chaos needed for a radical regime to take absolute power. On January 30, 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. He had promised to rebuild the military, end unemployment, and make Germany a dominant European empire once again. However, when Nazi officials inspected the Reich treasury, they faced a terrifying mathematical reality. And the nation was broke. Germany had virtually zero gold reserves left in the central bank. Foreign credit was completely cut off. Export trade was severely depressed. Government lacked the cash even to buy raw materials like iron ore, as from rubber and petroleum. Standard economic theory dictated that if Germany printed money to buy arms and pay workers, hyperinflation would return immediately. Hitler needed a financial wizard, a man who could fund massive rearmament out of thin air, without alerting foreign powers or destroying the domestic currency. He turned to Dr. Hjalmar Schacht. Schacht was a brilliant, bold, and pragmatic central banker that had served as president of the Reichsbank during the 1920s. He was highly respected on Wall Street and had close personal friendships with Montague Norman, governor of the Bank of England. Schacht devised one of the most sophisticated financial deceptions in modern history. Reparations of MEFO Bills. In 1933, the Nazi regime created a dummy corporation called the Metallurgische Forschungsgesellschaft, or MEFO for short. The company existed purely on paper, with nominal capital contributed by four major industrial corporations: Siemens, Rheinmetall, Osram, and Good Hope Works. When the German military ordered weapons, tanks, or aircraft from defense contractors, the government did not pay them with German marks. Instead, the government paid them with MEFO bills, promissory notes issued by this fake company and backed by the German state. These MEFO bills functioned as a completely secret, parallel currency. Defense contractors could hold the bills and earn a 4% annual interest rate, or they could trade them between themselves to purchase raw materials. Especially, MEFO bills were completely excluded from the official state budget documents. When foreign inspectors, economists, or domestic economists examined the official financial reports of the Reich, there was no sign of massive military spending. However, Germany was spending modest amounts on public works. In reality, billions of marks in military contracts were circulating through the corporate sector, most completely off the books. Between 1934 and 1938, MEFO bills financed over 12 billion marks of German rearmament. They paid for the construction of the Luftwaffe, the expansion of the Navy, and the mass production of military armor. Unemployment plummeted. Factories ran day and night. And the German economy appeared to have accomplished a miracle. Hjalmar Schacht knew the truth. MEFO bills were a ticking financial time bomb. They were short-term IOUs that would eventually mature and require real cash settlement. In 1938, the bills were coming due. The state faced an imminent risk of total financial bankruptcy. There were only two ways out of the MEFO trap: either scale down the military and confess the debt, or invade neighboring nations, seize their foreign cash reserves, confiscate their central bank gold. The financial clock created by MEFO bills was ticking down, causing Hitler to push Europe toward war before his secret balance sheet exploded. While Germany was secretly rearming through MEFO bills, a strange phenomenon was taking place. Quiet Swiss city of Basel. Inside a modest office building near the central railway station, that's the headquarters of the Bank for International Settlements. The BIS. Created in 1930 to handle World War I reparations, the BIS had evolved into an exclusive club for the world's elite central bankers. Here, the leaders of the Reichsbank, from the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and the Bank of France sat on the exact same board of directors. Even as the shadows of World War II darkened Europe, financial ties inside the BIS remained unbroken. In March 1939, German troops marched into Prague, occupying the remainder of Czechoslovakia. Immediately after taking the city, Nazi officers entered the National Bank of Czechoslovakia at gunpoint. They demanded the transfer of the Czech Central Bank's gold reserves, worth roughly £5 million sterling, stored at the Bank of England, from in London. The Czech Central Bank governor refused to sign the transfer, but Nazi officials forced the order through. The Bank of England received a directive to transfer the Czech gold to the account of the German Reichsbank. Norman, the governor of the Bank of England, complied with the transfer request, knowing full well that Czechoslovakia had been invaded. Gold was transferred into German hands through their mutual account at the BIS in Basel. When news of the transaction leaked to the British press, caused a massive political scandal in Parliament. MPS demanded to know why British financial institutions were handing over conquered national gold onto the Nazi war machine. The response from financial elites was cold and technical. IS was an international institution operating above national politics and war.